welcome to Chesterton Stage Productions' final showing of Magic by GK Chesterton. Yeah, just really quick, the programs have all the information about everything we're doing in the future, as well as sponsors. If you visit any of them, please say thank you. And you know what? I'm just gonna go straight to it. Magic was written by GK Chesterton, which makes me excited because obviously I named the whole thing after Chesterton. And it was a #1 hit in 1913 in England, and then it moved to America and was a huge stage hit here in 1914, and we are riding that wave. Chesterton wrote all sorts of things. He wrote newspaper articles, he wrote theology books, he wrote novels. He's most famous for his mystery stories with Father Brown, but he had not written a play. His best friend was, well, one of his best friends was George Bernard Shaw. And if that name sounds familiar, one of his most popular plays was Pygmalion, which became My Fair Lady. And he was one of the top playwrights in England at the time. And he was always trying to get Chesterton to write a play. And I personally just think it's wonderful to know that these two were friends. And just a slight breakdown, Chesterton was like a 300-pound liberal Catholic, and Shaw, classically liberal, that's different, and Shaw was a skinny vegetarian atheist socialist, and they literally agreed on nothing. But they were really great friends, and they were very supportive of each other. And then, of course, Shaw, being a playwright, kept encouraging Chesterton to write a play. And finally, Shaw sent Chesterton this letter. I shall deliberately destroy your credit as an essayist, as a journalist, as a critic, as a liberal, as everything that offers your laziness as a refuge, until starvation and shame drive you to a serious, dramatic pursuit. I shall repeat my public challenge to you, vault my superiority, insult your corpulence, torture Belloc, if necessary, call on you and steal your wife's affections by intellectual and athletic displays, until you contribute something to the British drama. We now present GK Chesterton's reply to that letter.
Who am I? I have a hat, but not to wear. I wear a sword, but not to slay. And ever in my bag I bear a pack of cards, but not to play.
What are you? What are you saying?
It is the language of the fairies, O daughter of Eve.
But I never thought the fairies were like you, but you are taller than I am.
The elves are of such stature as they will, but we would grow small, not large when we would mix with mortals.
You mean they are beings greater than we are?
O daughter of man, if you would see a fairy as he truly is, look for his head in the stars and his feet amid the floors of the sea. Old women have told you that the elves are too small to be seen, but I tell you that they are too mighty to be seen. For they are the elder gods, before whom the giants were like pygmies. They are the elemental spirits, and any of them is larger than this world. But you would look for them in acorns and on toadstools, and wonder that you never see them.
But you come in the size and shape of a man.
Because I would speak with a woman.
I think you are growing taller as you speak.
Oh, good evening. You are Mr. Smith. I mean, you are the rector, I think.
I am the rector.
And I'm the Duke's secretary. His Grace asked me to say he hopes to see you very soon, but he is engaged just now with the doctor.
Is the Duke ill?
Oh no, the doctor has come to ask him to help some cause or other. The Duke is never ill.
Is the doctor with him now?
Why, strictly speaking, he is not. The doctor has gone over the road to fetch a paper connecting with his proposal, but he hasn't far to go. As you can see, that is his red lamp at the end of his grounds.
Yes, I know. I am much obliged to you. I will wait as long as is necessary.
Oh, it won't be very long.
Good afternoon.
Oh, I beg your pardon, sir. I did not notice there was anyone here.
I beg yours. A new clergyman cannot expect to be expected. I only came to see the Duke about some local affairs.
And so, oddly enough, did I. But I suppose we should both like to get hold of him by a separate ear.
Oh, there's no disguise as far as I'm concerned. I've joined this league in starting a model public house in the parish. And in plain words, I've come to ask His Grace for a subscription to it.
And as it happens, I've joined in the petition against the erection of a model public house in this parish. The similarity of our position grows with every instant.
Yes, I think we must have been twins.
Well, what is a model public house? Do you mean a toy?
I mean a place where Englishmen can get decent drink and drink it decently. Do you call it a toy?
No. I should call that a conjuring trick. Or, in apology to your cloth, I will say a miracle.
I accept the apology to my cloth. I'm doing my duty as a priest. How can the church have a right to make men fast if she does not allow them to feast?
And when you've done feasting them, you'll send them to me to be cured.
And when you're done curing them, you'll send them to me to be buried.
Well, you have all the old doctrines. It's only fair you should have all the old jokes, too.
By the way, you call it a conjuring trick that poor people should drink moderately.
I call it a chemical discovery that alcohol is not a food.
You don't drink wine yourself.
Drink wine? Well, what else is there to drink?
So drinking decently is a conjuring trick that you can do anyhow.
Well, let us hope so. Talking about conjuring tricks, there is to be conjuring in all kinds of things here this afternoon.
Conjuring? Indeed. Why is that?
His Grace will be with you presently. He has asked me to deal with the business matters first of all.
This is rather splendid. The Duke's given £50 to the new public house.
The Duke is very liberal.
Very. But this is rather curious. He has also given £50 to the League for opposing the new public house.
The Duke is very liberal-minded.
Liberal-minded. Absent-minded, I should call it.
Well, yes, the Duke does suffer a little from absence of mind. He is all for compromise. Don't you know the kind of man who, when you talk to him about the 5 best breeds of dog, always ends up by buying a mongrel? The Duke is the kindest of men and always trying to please everybody. He generally finishes by pleasing nobody.
Yes, I think I know that sort of thing.
Take this conjuring, for instance. You know the Duke has 2 wards who are to live with him now.
Yes, I heard something about a nephew and niece from Ireland.
The niece came from Ireland some months ago, but the nephew comes back from America tonight. I think I will tell you all about it. In spite of your precious public house, you seem to me to be a sane man, and I fancy I shall want all the sane men I can get tonight.
I am at your service. But do you know, I'd rather guess you did not come here only to protest against my precious public house.
Well, you guessed right. I was family physician to the Duke's brother in Ireland. I knew the family pretty well.
I suppose you mean you knew something odd about the family.
Well, they saw fairies and things of that sort.
And I suppose to the medical mind, seeing fairies means much the same as seeing snakes.
Well, they saw them in Ireland. I suppose it's quite correct to see fairies in Ireland. It's like gambling at Monte Carlo. It's quite respectable. But I do draw the line that they're seeing fairies in England. I do object to their bringing their ghosts and goblins and witches into the poor Duke's own back garden and within a yard of my own red lamp. Shows a lack of tact.
But I do understand that the Duke's nephew and niece see fairies and witches between here and your land.
Well, the nephew's been in America. It stands to reason you can't see fairies in America. But there's this sort of superstition in the family, and I'm not easy in my mind about the girl.
Why? What does she do?
Oh, she wanders about the park and the woods in the evenings. Damp evenings for choice. She calls it the Celtic twilight. I've no use for the Celtic twilight myself. It has a tendency to get on the chest. But what is worse, she's always talking about meeting somebody. Some elf or wizard or something. I don't like it at all.
Did you tell the Duke?
Oh yes, I told the Duke. The result was the conjurer.
The conjurer?
The Duke is indescribable. He will be here presently, and you shall judge for yourself. Put 2 or 3 facts or ideas before him, and the thing he makes out of them is always something that seems to have nothing to do with it. Tell any other human being about a girl dreaming of the fairies and her practical brother from America, and he would settle it in some obvious way and satisfy someone. Send her to America or let her have her fairies in Ireland. Now the Duke thinks a conjurer would just make the case. I suppose he vaguely thinks it will brighten things up and somehow satisfy the believer's interest in supernatural things and the unbeliever's interest in smart things. As a matter of fact, the unbeliever thinks the conjurer's a fraud, and the believer thinks he's a fraud too. The conjurer satisfies nobody. That is why he satisfies the Duke.
Good morning, Mr. Smith. So sorry to have kept you waiting, but we're rather in a rush today. You know Mr. Carleon's coming this afternoon.
Yes, Your Grace. His train will be in by now. I've sent the trap.
Thank you. My nephew, Dr. Grimthorpe Morris, you know. Miss Carleon's brother from America. I hear he's doing great things out there. Petrol or something. Must move with the times, eh?
I'm afraid Mr. Smith doesn't always agree with moving with the times.
Oh, come. Progress, you know, progress. Of course, I know how busy you are. You mustn't overwork yourself. Hastings was telling me you laughed at those subscriptions of mine. Well, I believe in looking at both sides of a question, you know. Aspects. As old Buffalo used to say, aspects. You represent the tendency to drink in moderation and do good in your way. The doctor represents the tendency not to drink at all and has done good his way. We can't be ancient Britons, you know.
Ancient Britons.
Don't bother, it's only his broad-mindedness.
I saw the place you've put up for it, Mr. Smith. Very good work. Very good work indeed. Art for the people, eh? I particularly like the woodwork over the west door. I'm glad to see you use the new sort of graining. Why, it all reminds one of the French Revolution.
Does it remind you of the French Revolution?
As much as of anything else, his grace never reminds me of anything.
Say, can somebody see into one of these trunks? See here, does a duke live here?
Yes, only one.
I reckon he's the one I want. Anyhow, I'm his nephew.
Delighted to see you, my dear boy. I hear you've been doing very well for yourself.
Well, pretty well, Duke, and better still for old Paul T. Van Dam, I guess. I managed the old man's mines out in Arizona. You know.
Ah, very go-ahead man. Very go-ahead methods, I'm told. And I dare say he does a great deal of good with his money. And we can't go back to the Spanish Inquisition.
How's Patricia?
Oh, she's very well, I think. She's...
Well then, where's Patricia?
Miss Carleone is walking about the grounds, I think.
Ooh, it's a mighty chilly night to choose. Does my sister commonly select such evenings to take the air and the dam?
If I may say so, I quite agree with you. I've often taken the liberty of warning your sister against going out in all weathers like this.
The artist temperament. What I always call the artistic temperament. Wordsworth, you know, and all that.
All what?
Why, everything's temperament, you know. It's her temperament to see the fairies, and it's my temperament not to see the fairies. Why, I've walked around these grounds 20 times and never seen a fairy. And it's like that about this wizard, or whatever she calls him. For her, there would be someone there. But for us, there would not be, don't you see?
Somebody there? What do you mean?
Well, you can't quite call it a man.
A man?
As old Buffalo used to say, what is a man?
With your permission, Duke, I eliminate old Buffalo. Do you mean that somebody has had the tarnation coolness to suggest that some man...
Oh, not a man, you know. A magician. Something mythical.
Not a man, but a medicine man.
I am a medicine man.
And you don't look mythical, Doc.
Well, you know, the artistic temperament.
See here, Duke, in most commercial ways, we're a pretty forward country. And in these moral ways, we're content to be a pretty backwards country. And if you ask me whether I like my sister walking about the woods on a night like this, well, I don't.
I'm afraid you Americans aren't so advanced as I had hoped. Why, as old Buffalo used to say,
Whose voice is that?
It is no business of mine to decide.
Oh, you need not trouble. I know who it is. Patricia! Patricia! Where have you been?
Oh, in Fairyland.
And whereabouts is that?
It's rather different from other places. It's either nowhere or it's wherever you are.
Has it any inhabitants?
Generally, only two. When self and when shadow. Though, whether I am his shadow or he is my shadow is never found out.
He? Who?
Oh, you needn't get conventional about it, Morris. He is not a mortal.
What's his name?
We have no names there. You never really know anybody if you know his name.
What does he look like?
I have only met him in the twilight. He seems robed in a long cloak, with a peaked cap or hood like the elves in my nursery stories. Sometimes when I look out of the window here, I see him passing around the house like a shadow, or see his pointed hood dark against the sunset or the rising of the moon.
What does he talk about?
He tells me the truth, of very many true things. He is a wizard.
How do you know he's a wizard? Why, I suppose he plays some tricks on you.
I should know he was a wizard if he played no tricks, but once he stooped and picked up a stone and cast it into the air, and it flew up into God's heaven like a bird.
Was that what first made you think he was a wizard?
Oh no, when I first saw him, he was tracing circles and pentacles in the grass and talking the language of the elves.
Do you know the language of the elves?
Not till I heard it.
See here, Patricia, I reckon this kind of thing is going to be the limit. I'm just not going to have you be let in by some blamed tramp or fortune teller all because you choose to read minor poetry about fairies. If this gypsy or Whatever he is, chum with you again. I'll...
You must allow a little more for poetry. We can't all feed on nothing but petrol.
Quite right, quite right. And being Irish, you know, Celtic, as old Buffalo used to say. Charming songs about an Irish girl with a plaid shawl and a banshee. Poor old Gladstone.
I thought you yourself considered the family superstition bad for the health.
I consider a family superstition is better for the health than a family quarrel. Well, it must be nice to be young and still see all those stars and sunsets. We old buffers won't be too strict with you if your view of things sometimes gets a bit mixed up, shall we say. If the stars get loose about the grass by mistake, or if, once or twice, the sunset gets into the east, we should only say, dream as much as you like. Dream for all mankind. Dream for us who can dream no longer. But do not quite forget the difference.
What difference?
The difference between the things that are beautiful and the things that are there. That red lamp over my door isn't beautiful, but it's there. You might even come to be glad it is there when the stars of gold and silver are faded. I'm an old man now, but some men are still glad to find my red star. I do not say they're the wise men.
Yes, I know you are good to everybody. But don't you think there may be floating and spiritual stars which will last longer than the red lamps?
Yes, but they are fixed stars.
The red lamp will last my time.
Capital, capital. Why, it's like Tennyson. I remember when I was an undergrad.
What's the matter?
The red star is gone.
Nonsense! There's just somebody standing in front of it. Say, Duke, there's somebody standing in the garden.
I told you he walked about the garden.
It's that fortune teller of yours.
Somebody in the garden. Why, this land cafe.
Spry fellow, your friend. He slipped through my hands like a shadow.
I told you he was a shadow.
Oh, well then, I guess there's going to be a shadow hunt. Got a lantern, Duke?
You needn't trouble. He will come if I call him. You may enter all doors.
Now see here, wizard. We got you, and we know you're a fraud.
Pardon me, but I do not fancy that we know that. For myself, I must confess of something of the doctor's agnosticism.
I didn't know you parsons stuck up for any peoples but your own.
I stood up for the thing that every man has a right to. Perhaps the only thing that every man has a right to.
And what is that?
The benefit of the doubt. Even your master, the petroleum millionaire, has a right to that. And I think he needs it more.
I don't think there's much doubt about the question, Minister. I've met this sort of fellow often enough. The sort of fellow who wheedles money out of girls by telling them he can make stones disappear.
Do you say you can make stones disappear?
Why, yes. I can make stones disappear.
And I reckon you're the kind of tough who knows how to make a watch and chain disappear.
Why, yes. I can make a watch and chain disappear.
And I should think that you were pretty good at disappearing yourself.
I have done such a thing.
Will you disappear now?
No. I think I shall appear instead.
Oh, my, the professor's a snappy dresser.
Good evening, Your Grace. I'm afraid that I am rather early for the performance, but this, gentleman seemed rather impatient for it to begin. Oh, good evening. Why, really? Are you the... Yes, I am the conjurer. I'm very sorry that I am not a wizard.
I wish you were a thief instead.
Have I committed a worse crime than thieving?
You have committed the cruelest crime I think that there is.
And what is the cruelest crime?
Stealing a child's toy.
And what have I stolen?
A fairy tale. Here are the programs and the entertainment your Grace wanted. Mr. Carleon wishes to see them very much.
Thanks, thanks.
Shall I take the programs for your Grace?
No, no, I shan't forget, I shan't forget. Why, you've no idea how businesslike I am. We have to be, you know. I know you're a bit of a socialist, but I assure you, there is a great deal of good to do. Stake in the country and all that. Why, look at remembering faces now. The king never forgets faces. I never forget faces. The professor here, who performs before the king. You see it on the caravans, you know. Performs before the king almost every night, I suppose.
Yes, and I sometimes let His Majesty have an evening off, and turn my attention, of course, to the very highest of nobilities. Naturally, I have performed before every sovereign potentate, white and black. There was never a conjurer who hadn't.
That's right. And you would say with me that the great business of a king is remembering people.
I should say it is remembering which people to remember.
Well, now, being really businesslike.
Shall I take the programs for your Grace?
No, I shan't forget. Is there anything else?
I have to go down the village about the wire to Stratford. The only other thing at all urgent is the militant vegetarians.
Ah, the militant vegetarians. You've heard of them, of course. Won't obey the law so long as the government serves out meat.
Well, let them be comforted. There are a good many people who don't get much meat.
And I'm bound to say they're enthusiastic. Advanced, too. Certainly advanced, like Joan of Arc.
Was Joan of Arc a vegetarian?
Well, it's all very high ordeal after all. The sacredness of life, you know. The sacredness of life. But they carry it too far. They killed a policeman down in Kent. Killed a policeman?
How vegetarian.
Well, I suppose it was so long as they didn't eat him.
They're asking only for a small subscription. Indeed, they prefer to collect a large number of half-crowns to prove their popularity of their movement. But I should advise...
Give them 3 shillings, then.
If I might suggest...
Hang it all! We gave the anti-vegetarians 3 shillings. It only seems fair.
If I might suggest anything, I think your Grace will be wise not to subscribe in this case. The anti-vegetarians have already used their funds to form gangs, ostensibly to protect their own meetings. And if the vegetarians use theirs to break up meetings, well, it will look rather funny that we have paid roughs on both sides. It'll be rather difficult to explain when it comes before the magistrate.
But I shall be the magistrate. That's the system, my dear Hastings. That's the advantage of the system. Not a logical system, no Rousseau in it, but see how well it works. I shall be the very best magistrate that could be on the bench. The others would be biased, you know. Old Sir Lawrence is a vegetarian himself, and might be hard on the anti-vegetarian roughs. And Colonel Kershaw would be sure to be hard on the vegetarian roughs. But if I've paid both of them, of course I shan't be hard on either one of them. And there you have it. Just perfect impartiality.
Shall I carry the programs for your Grace?
No, I won't forget him. Well, Professor, is there any news in the conjuring world? fear that there is never any news in the conjuring world. Don't you have a newspaper or something? Why, everyone has a newspaper now. The Daily Sword Swallower, or that sort of thing. No, but I have been a journalist myself, and I do think that journalism and conjuring will always be incompatible. Incompatible? Oh, but that's where I differ. That's where I take larger views, larger laws, as old Buffalo used to say. Why, nothing's really incompatible except husband and wife, and so on. Why, you must speak to Morris about this. It's wonderful the way incompatibility has gone forward in the States. I only mean that the two trades rest on opposite principles. The whole point of being a conjurer is that you do not explain a thing that has happened. And the journalist? Well, the whole point of being a journalist is that you do explain a thing that hasn't happened. But you'll want somewhere to discuss the new tricks. There are no new tricks, and even if there were, we shan't want them discussed. I'm afraid you aren't really advanced. Are you interested in modern progress? Yes, we are interested in all tricks done by illusion. Well, I must go speak to Hastings. Pleasure of seeing you later. Why are nice men such asses? Well, that all seems right. The pack of cards, that is a pack of cards. And the pack of cards, that is not a pack of cards. The hat, which looks like a gentleman's hat, but in reality is no gentleman's hat, only my hat, and I am not a gentleman. I am a conjurer, and this is a conjurer's hat. I can take rabbits out of it, snakes out of it, goldfish out of it, although I mustn't take my own head out of it. I suppose that makes me a lower animal still than a rabbit or a snake. Anyhow, they can get out of the hat, and I cannot, for I am a conjurer, and nothing else but a conjurer. Unless I should show that I was something besides the conjurer, and that would be worse.
I beg your pardon. I came to get some programs. My uncle wants them.
Miss Carlian, might I speak to you a moment? The question is purely practical.
I can hardly imagine what the question can be.
I am the question.
And what have I to do with that?
You have everything to do with it. I am the question, and you...
Well, what am I?
You are the answer.
The answer to what?
The answer to me. You think that I'm a liar because I walked about in the woods and fields with you and told you that I can make stones disappear. Well, so I can. I am the conjurer, and in mere point of fact, it was not a lie. But even if it were a lie, I should have told it just the same. I would have told 20 such lies. You may or may not know why.
I know nothing about such lies.
I don't suppose you understand what it means to a man like me to speak with a lady like you, even on false pretenses. I'm an adventurer. A blackguard, if one can earn the title, by being in all the blackguard societies of the world. I've thought out everything by myself. When I was a gutter snipe in Fleet Street, or lower still, a journalist in Fleet Street. Before I met you, I never guessed that some rich people ever thought at all. Well, that is all that I mean to say. We had some good conversations, didn't we? I'm a liar, but I did tell you a great deal of the truth.
Yes. You did tell me a great deal of the truth. You told me hundreds and thousands of truths, but you never told me the truth one wants to know.
And what is that?
You never told me the truth about yourself. You never told me that you were only the conjurer.
I didn't tell you that because I do not even know it. I do not know if I am only the conjurer.
What do you mean?
Sometimes I fear that I am something much worse than just the conjurer.
I cannot think of anything worse than a conjurer who does not call himself a conjurer.
There is something worse. But that is not what I mean to say. Come, let me put you a case. Never mind about whether it is our case. A man spends his time incessantly
going about third-rate carriages to fifth-rate lodgings. He has to make up new tricks, new pattern, new nonsense, sometimes every night of his life. And mostly, he has to do it in the beastly black cities of the Midlands and the North, where he can't get out into the country. Well, you know, the actors and orators and those types of people who like to rehearse their tricks in the open air if they can. You've heard the story of the great statesman who was heard in the garden by his own gardener saying, "Had I, Mr. Speaker, received the smallest intimation that I might be called upon to speak tonight." Well, conjurers are just the same. It takes some time to prepare an impromptu, and a man like this goes about the woods and fields doing all of his tricks beforehand, and speaking all sorts of gibberish because he thinks that he is alone. But one evening, this man found that he was not alone. He found that a very beautiful child was watching him.
A child?
Yes, that was his first impression. He is a very intimate friend of mine, and I've known him all my life. But his sense tells me that she is not a child, for she does not fulfill the definition.
And what is the definition of a child?
Someone you can play with.
Why did you wear the cloak with the hood up?
I think that it escaped your notice that it was raining.
And what did this friend of yours do?
He destroyed a fairy tale. For he created a fairy tale that he was bound to destroy. But do you blame a man very much, Miss Carlian, if he tried to live the only fairy tale that he ever had in his life? Suppose that he said that the silly circles that he was drawing for practice were really magic circles. Suppose he said that the Bosch that he was speaking was the language of the fairies. Remember, he has read all the fairy tales as much as you have, for fairy tales are the only democratic institutions, and all the classes have read all the fairy tales. So do you blame him very much if he too tried to have a holiday in fairyland?
I blame him less than I did. But I still say there could be nothing worse than false magic, and after all, it was he who brought the false magic.
Yes, but it was she who brought the real magic.
I know that, I know that, I know that. Let's see. That's the false bottom, I think. That's where through the wire. I know that. That goes up the sleeve. That's the false bottom again. That's a substituted pack of cards.
Really, Morris, you mustn't talk as if you know everything.
Oh, Miss Carlian, I don't mind anyone knowing everything. There's something that is much more important than knowing how a thing is done.
And what is that?
Knowing how to do it.
That's so, eh? Being the high-toned conjurer because you can't any longer take all the sidewalk as a fairy.
Really, Morris, you are very rude, and it's quite ridiculous to be rude. This gentleman was only practicing some tricks by himself in the garden. If there was any mistake, it was mine. Come now, shake hands, or whatever men do when they apologize. Don't be silly. He won't turn you into a bowl of goldfish.
Well, I guess that's so. Shake. And you won't turn me into a bowl of goldfish anyhow, Professor. I understand that when you do produce a bowl of goldfish, they are generally slips of carrots. That is so, Professor.
Well, yes. Judge for yourself.
Ah, very good, very good. But I know how that's done. I know how that's done. Let's see. You have an India rubber cap, you know, or cover.
Yes.
Ah, most mysteries are tolerably plain if you know the apparatus. I guess we wish we had all the old apparatus of all the old priests and prophets from the beginning of the world. But I guess most miracles were just a matter of panels and wires.
I don't understand you. What old apparatus do you want so much?
Well, sir, I want that old apparatus that turned rods into snakes. I want those smart appliances, sir, that sent water out of the rock when old man Moses chose to hit it. I guess it's a pity we've lost machinery. I would like to have those old conjurers here who call themselves patriarchs and prophets in your precious Bible.
Morris, you mustn't talk like that.
Well, I don't believe in religion.
Hush, hush. Nobody but women believe in religion.
I think this is a fitting opportunity to show you another ancient conjuring trick.
Which one is that?
The vanishing lady.
There is one part of the old apparatus I regret, especially being lost.
Yes.
The apparatus for writing the book of Job.
Well, they didn't know everything in those old times.
No, and in those old times they knew they didn't. Where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding?
Somewhere in America, I believe.
Man knoweth not the price thereof, neither is it found in the land of the living. The deep saith, it is not in me. The sea saith, it is not with me. Death and destruction say we have heard tell of it. Man understandeth the way thereof, and God understandeth the way thereof, and knoweth the place thereof. For he looketh to the ends of the earth, and seeth unto the whole heaven. But to man he hath said, Behold, the fear of the Lord is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding. How's that for agnosticism, Dr. Grimthorpe? What a pity that apparatus is lost.
Well, you may just smile how you choose, I reckon. I say that the conjurer here could be the biggest man in the big, blessed centuries if he could just show us how the holy old tricks were done. We must say this for old man Moses, that he was in advance of his time. When he did the old tricks, they were new tricks. He got the pull in the public. He could do his tricks before men. Great, bearded, fighting men who could win battles and sing psalms. But this is all behind the times. That's why they only show it to schoolboys. There isn't a trick on that table I don't know. The whole trade is as dead as a vine and not half so satisfying. Why, he brought out a bowl of goldfish, an old trick that anybody could do.
Why, yes, I quite agree. The apparatus is perfectly simple. But, as you said, no. How about this? Why don't you show me one of those goldfish of yours, would you?
I'm not a paid play actor come here to conjure. I'm not here to do stale tricks. I'm here to see through them. I say it's an old trick, and...
Yes, but as you said, we never show them except to schoolboys.
And may I ask you, Professor Hocus Pocus, whom you're calling a schoolboy?
Oh, I beg your pardon. Your sister will tell you that I'm sometimes mistaken about schoolboys.
I forbid you to appeal to my sister.
That is exactly what a schoolboy would do.
I am not a schoolboy, Professor. I am a quiet businessman. But I tell you, in the country that I come from, the hand of a quiet businessman goes to his hip pocket at an insult like that.
Let it go to his pockets. I thought that the hand of a quiet businessman more often went to somebody else's pocket.
You!
Gentlemen, I think you are both forgetting yourselves.
Perhaps. I ask a pardon for what I said. It was certainly in excess of the young gentleman's deserts. I do sometimes rather wish that I could forget myself.
Well, the entertainment's coming on, and you English don't like a scene. I reckon I'll have to bury the blamed old hatchet too.
Mr. Carleone, you will forgive an old man who knew your father well if he doubts whether you are doing yourself justice in treating yourself as an American Indian merely because you have lived in America. In my old friend Huxley's time, we of the middle classes disbelieved in reason and all sorts of things, but we did believe in good manners. It is a pity if the aristocracy can't. I don't like to hear you say you are a savage and have buried a tomahawk. I would rather hear you say, as your Irish ancestors would have said, that you have sheathed your sword with the dignity proper to a gentleman.
Very well. I have sheathed my sword with the dignity proper to a gentleman.
And I've sheathed my sword with the dignity proper to a conjurer.
And how does a conjurer sheath a sword?
Then we all agree there shall be no quarrel.
May I say a word? I have a great dislike for a quarrel for a reason quite beyond the duty to my cloth.
And what is that?
I object to a quarrel because it always interrupts an argument. May I bring you back for a moment to the argument? You were saying that these modern conjuring tricks are simply old miracles when they have once been found out. But surely another view is possible. When we speak of things being sham, we generally mean that they are imitations of things that are genuine. Take that Reynolds of the Duke's great-grandfather, for I were to say it was a copy.
Well, the Duke's real amiable, but I reckon you'd find what you'd call the interruption of an argument.
Well, suppose I did say so. You wouldn't take it as meaning that Sir Joshua Reynolds never lived. Why should sham miracles prove to us that real saints and prophets never lived? There may be sham magic and real magic also. There may be turnip ghosts precisely because they're real ghosts. There may be theatrical fairies precisely because there are real fairies. You do not abolish the Bank of England by pointing to a forged banknote.
I hope the professor enjoys being called a forged banknote.
Almost as much as being called the prospectus of some American families.
Gentlemen, gentlemen!
I'm sorry.
Well, let's have the argument first, and I guess we can have the quarrel afterwards. I'll clean this house of some encumbrances. See here, Mr. Smith, I'm not putting anything on your real miracle notion. I say, and science says, that there is a cause for everything. Sooner or later, science will find out that cause, and your old miracle will look mighty mean. Sooner or later, science will botanize a bit on your turnip ghosts and make you look turnips yourselves for having taken any. I say...
I don't like this peaceful argument of yours. The boy is getting much too excited.
You say old man Reynolds lived, and science don't say no. But I guess he's dead now, and you'll no more raise your saints and prophets from the dead, and you'll raise the Duke's great-grandfather to dance upon that wall.
Why, the picture is moving.
You were in the room before us. Do you think that'll take us in? You can do all that with wires.
Why, yes, I could do all that with wires.
And you reckon I shouldn't know? Why, that's how the darn dirty spiritualists get you. They say they can make the furniture move of itself. If it does move, they move it, and we mean to know how. Everyone knows that, a sliding plank. It can be done with a sliding plank.
Yes, it can be done with a sliding plank.
You were right on the spot, Doc, when you talked about that red lamp of yours. That red lamp is the light of science that will put out all the lanterns of your turnip ghosts. It's a consuming fire, Doctor, but it is the red light of the morning. Why, your priest and prophets can no more stop that light from shining than Joshua could stop the sun and the moon. Why, a real fairy in an outfit cloak strayed too near to the lamp an hour or two ago, and it turned him into a common society clown with a white tie. Wait a minute, I got you, I'll have you. You put a wire! No, that can't be it. You put a mirror. You have a mirror. No. I got it. A mixture of lights. Why not? If you put a red light with a green light.
You don't get blue.
Well, just at this moment we need not inquire.
You call yourself a man of science, and you dare to tell me not to inquire.
We only mean that for the moment you might let it alone.
No, priest, I will not let it alone. Let's see. It has to be lights. Has to.
If you've done this trick, for God's sake, undo it.
It's the glass. You have done doing something to the glass.
I don't think that you will find anything wrong.
Then I'll find out what's wrong with the lamp.
It is still a wet night, I'm afraid.
Yes, and somebody else will be wandering about the garden now. I suppose in this case, the Celtic twilight will not get on the chest.
Oh, if it were only the chest.
Wait.
Where is my brother?
I am afraid that he is walking about in fairyland.
But he mustn't go out in a night like this. Why, it's very dangerous.
Oh yes, it is very dangerous. He might meet a fairy.
What do you mean?
You went out on a night like this and met this sort of fairy, and since then it has only brought you sorrow.
I am going out to find my brother.
What is that noise? She isn't singing those songs to him, is she?
No, he doesn't understand the language of the elves.
But we grew.
But what are all those cries and gasps I hear?
Oh, the normal noises, I believe, of a quiet businessman.
Sir, I can understand your being bitter, for I admit you've been uncivilly received, but to speak like that just now.
May I speak to the doctor?
My dear lady, certainly. Shall I fetch the Duke?
No, the doctor.
Can I be of any use?
I only want the doctor.
That last was a wonderful trick of yours.
Thank you. I suppose you mean that it was the only one that you didn't see through?
Something of the kind, I confess. Your last trick was the best trick I've ever seen. It was so good that I wish you had not done it.
And so do I.
How do you mean? Do you wish you had never been a conjurer?
I wish that I had never been born.
It is all right so far. We have brought him back.
You told me there was mental trouble with the girl.
Yes, I told you there was mental trouble with the girl. No, I told you there was mental trouble in the family.
Where's Mr. Morris Carleon?
We have got him into bed in the next room. His sister is looking after him.
His sister! Oh, then do you believe in fairies?
Believe in fairies? What do you mean?
Suppose you put the person who does believe in them in charge of the person who doesn't.
Well, I suppose I do.
You don't think she'll keep him awake all night with fairy tales?
Certainly not.
You don't think she'll throw the medicine bottle out the window or administer a dewdrop? Four-leaf clover, say?
No, of course not.
I only ask you this because you scientific men are a little hard on us clergymen. You do not believe in a priesthood, but you'll admit I'm more of a priest than this conjurer is really a magician. You've been talking about the Bible and the higher criticism, but even by the higher criticism, the Bible is much older than the language of the elves, which was, as far as I can make out, invented this afternoon. But Miss Carleon believed in the wizard. Miss Carleon believed in the language of the elves, and you put her in charge of an invalid without a flicker of doubt because you trust women.
Yes, I trust women.
You trust women with the practical issues of life and death through sleepless hours when a shaking hand or an extra grain would kill.
Yes.
But if the woman gets up to go to early service at my church, you call her weak-minded and say that nobody but women can believe in religion.
I should never call this woman weak-minded. No, by God, not even if she went to church.
Yet there are many as strong-minded who believe passionately in going to church.
Weren't there as many who believed passionately in Apollo?
What harm came in believing in Apollo? What massive harm may have come of not believing in Apollo? You talk of religious mania. Is there no such thing as irreligious mania? Is there no such thing in this house at this moment?
Then you think no one should question at all.
I think that is what comes of questioning. Why can't you leave the universe alone and let it mean what it likes? Why shouldn't the thunder be Jupiter? More men have made themselves silly by wondering what the devil it was if it wasn't Jupiter.
Do you believe in your own religion?
Suppose I don't. I should still be a fool to question it. The child who doubts about Santa Claus has insomnia. The child who believes has a good night's rest.
You're a pragmatist.
That is what the lawyers call vulgar abuse. But I still appeal to practice. Here is a family over which you tell me a mental calamity hovers. Here is a boy who questions everything and a girl who can believe anything, upon which has a curse fallen.
Talking about the pragmatists, I'm glad to hear. A very forward movement. I suppose Roosevelt now. Well, we move, you know, we move. First, there was the missing link. No. First there was the protoplasm, and then the missing link. And the Magna Carta, and so on. Look at the Insurance Act.
I would rather not.
Ah, prejudice, you doctors, you. I never had any myself.
Any what?
Never had any Marconis myself. Wouldn't touch 'em. Well, I must go see how Morris is.
Well, of all the... You asked me just now which member of the family had inherited the family madness.
Yes, I did.
On my living soul, I believe it must be the Duke.
I think we could all use a breather. There's a beautiful concession table in the back, as well as tea in the corner. And as you know, everything stops for tea.
You're sitting at your desk. The report's due in by 3. And it's 10 past now, but for heaven's sake, it's still about time for tea. Or your wife or husband's left you, taking kids' furniture and the keys. Well, pull yourself together, keep calm, carry on. Take time out for tea. A superhero saves the world from a fiendish villain spree. Needs to get back to the Batcave, where Alfred's got the tea. A captain on the ocean hits an iceberg and might freeze. But before he mans the lifeboat, well, there's still time for tea.
It's a very good English custom for the weather be cold or hot. If you need a little pickup, your little teacup will always hit the spot. For the soldiers may be fighting in the trenches or a battleship at sea, but there isn't any war when the clock strikes 4. Everything stops for tea.
1, 2, 3, 4. Everything stops for tea. 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything stops for tea. 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything stops for tea. 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything stops for tea. This truly mighty empire wasn't built in an afternoon. Cause we had to stop for muffins and stuff, buttered crumpets and a fresh pot brewed for 2. Gamekeeper or a poacher, whether lord or the cleaner of Baloo, whether rich or poor, when the clock strikes 4, you know just what to do. When Queen Vic ran the country, she was grumpy then, my friend. Just a little bit of puff and a pot of brown stuff, and it picked her up again. If your life is filled with hardships, well, that's awful, poor old you. But you'll always have me, and you'll always have tea, so come on and pour that brew.
It's a very good English custom for the weather be cold or hot. If you need a little pickup, your little teacup will always hit the spot. For the soldiers may be fighting in the trenches or a battleship at sea,
But there isn't any war when the clock strikes 4. Everything stops for tea.
Oh, forgive me, but may I detain you for one moment? I suppose you're aware that there have been rather grave developments in the case of illness surrounding your performance. I would not say, of course, because of your performance.
Thank you.
Nevertheless, mental excitement is necessarily an element of importance in physiological troubles, and your triumphs this evening were really so extraordinary that I cannot pretend to dismiss them from my patient's case. He is at present in a state somewhat analogous to delirium, but in which he can still partially ask and answer questions. The question he continuously asks is how you managed to do your last trick.
Ah, my last trick.
Now I was wondering whether we could make any arrangement which would be fair to you in the matter. Would it be possible for you to give me in confidence the means of satisfying this fixed idea he has seemed to got? This special condition of semi-delirious disputation is a rare one, and connected, in my experience, with rather unfortunate cases.
Do you mean that he is going mad?
Really, you ask me an unfair question. I could not explain the fine shades of these things to a layman, and even if what you suggest were so, I should have to regard it as a professional secret.
And don't you ask me a rather unfair question, Dr. Grimthorpe? If yours is a professional secret, why is not mine a professional secret also? If you may hide truth from the world, why may not I? You don't tell your tricks, and I don't tell my tricks.
Ours are not tricks.
But no one can be sure of that until the tricks are told.
What the public can see of Doctor's cures is plain.
Yes, as plain as the red lamp over his door this evening.
Your secret, of course, would be strictly kept by everyone involved.
Of course, because people in delirium always keep secrets strictly.
No one sees the patient but his sister and myself.
Yes, his sister. Is she very anxious?
What would you suppose?
Doctor, there are about 1,000 reasons why I could not tell you the way that I did that last trick, but one will suffice, because it is the most practical of them all.
Well, and why shouldn't you tell me?
Because you wouldn't believe me, even if I did.
So very kind of you to have waited, Professor. I expect Dr. Grimthorpe has explained this little difficulty better than I could. Nothing like the medical mind for a scientific statement. Look at Ibsen.
Of course, the professor feels considerable reluctance in the matter. He points out that his secrets are an essential part of his profession.
Of course, of course. Tricks is a trade, eh? Very proper, of course. Quite a case of noblish oblige. But I dare say we shall be able to find a way out of the matter. Now, my dear sirs, I hope you would not be offended if I were to say that this ought to be a business matter. We are asking you for a piece of your professional work and knowledge, and if I may have the pleasure of writing you a check.
I thank you, Grace, but I have already received my check. You will find it on the counter coil, just after the check that you so kindly gave to the Society for the Suppression of Conjuring.
Now, I don't want you to take it in that way. I want you to take it in a broader way. Free, you know, modern and all that. Wonderful man, Bernard Shaw.
If you feel any delicacy, the payment need not be made merely to you. I quite respect your feelings in the matter.
Quite so, quite so. Haven't you got a cause or something? Why, everyone has a cause now. The conjurer's widows, or that sort of thing. Come, let me call it a couple of them.
No, I have no widows.
Then a pension or annuity for any widows you may procure.
Would you really be willing to pay a sum like this to know the way that I did that last trick?
I would willingly pay much more.
I think I explained to you that the case is serious.
You would willingly pay much more. But suppose I tell you the trick and you find that there is nothing in it.
You mean it's really quite simple? Why, I should say that that would be the best thing that could possibly happen. A little healthy laughter is the best possible thing for convalescence.
I don't think that you will laugh.
But as you say, it is something quite simple.
Yes, it is the simplest thing that there is in the world. That is why you will not laugh.
Why? What do you mean? What shall we do?
You will disbelieve it.
And why?
Because it is so simple. You asked me how I did that last trick. I will tell you how I did the last trick. I did it by magic.
You really mean that you take the check and then tell us it was only magic?
I tear the check and tell you that it was only magic.
But hang it all, there's no such thing.
Yes, there is. I wish to God I did not know that there was.
Why really, magic?
Yes, Your Grace. One of those larger laws you were talking about.
One moment, sir.
What do you want?
I want to apologize to you. I mean on behalf of the company. I think it was wrong to offer you money. I think it was more wrong to mystify you with medical language and call the thing delirium. I have more respect for conjurer's patter than for doctor's patter. Both are meant to stupefy, but yours meant to stupefy only for a moment. Now, I put it to you in plain words and on plain human Christian grounds. Here's a poor boy who may be going mad. Suppose you had a son in such a position. Would you not expect people to tell you the whole truth if it could help you?
Yes, and I have told you the whole truth. Now go and find if it helps you.
You know quite well it will not help us.
And why is that?
You know quite well why not. You are an honest man. You have said it yourself, because he would not believe it.
Does anyone believe it? Do you believe it?
Your question is quite fair. Come, let us sit down and talk about it. Let me take your cloak.
I will take off my cloak when you take off your coat.
Why? Do you want me to fight?
I want you to be martyred! I want you to bear witness to your own creed. I say that these things were supernatural. I say that it was done by a spirit. The doctor does not believe me, for he cannot believe... He is an agnostic and knows everything. And the Jew cannot believe me, for he cannot believe anything so simple as a miracle. But what the devil are you for if you don't believe in a miracle? What does your coat mean if it doesn't mean that there's such a thing as the supernatural? And what does your cursed collar mean if it doesn't mean that there's such thing as a spirit? Why the devil do you dress up like that if you don't even believe in it? Or perhaps you don't believe in devils.
I wish I could believe.
And I wish I could disbelieve.
May I speak to the conjurer?
You want the doctor?
No, the conjurer.
Are there any developments?
I only want to speak to the conjurer. You must tell me how you did that last trick. You will. I know you will. Oh, I know my poor brother was rude to you. He's rude to everybody, but oh, he's such a little boy.
I suppose you know that there are things that men never tell to women, for they are too horrible.
Yes. And there are things women never tell to men. They also are too horrible. I am here to hear them all.
Do you mean that I can say whatever I'd like? No matter how dark it is, no matter how dreadful it is, no matter how damnable it is.
I have gone through too much to be terrified now. Tell me the very worst.
I will tell you the very worst. I fell in love with you when I first saw you.
But you said I looked like a child, and
I told a lie.
oh, this is terrible.
I was in love. I took an opportunity. And you believed quite simply that I was a magician.
Oh, it
but
is terrible. It is terrible. I never believed you were a magician.
Never believed I was a magician.
I always knew you were a man.
I am a man, and you are a woman, and all the elves have gone to Elfland, and all the devils to hell. And you and I will walk out of this great, vulgar house and be married. Everyone is crazy in this house tonight, I think. What am I saying? As if you could marry me.
This is the first time you have failed in courage.
What do you mean?
I mean to draw your attention to the fact that you have recently made an offer. I accept it.
It's nonsense. It's nonsense. How can a man marry an archangel, let alone a lady? My mother was a lady who married a dying fiddler who tramped the roads. And the mixture plays the cat and banjo with my body and soul. I can see my mother now cooking food in dirtier and dirtier lodgings, and darning socks with weaker and weaker eyes, when she could have worn pearls by consenting to be a rational person.
And she could have grown pearls by consenting to be an oyster.
There was little pleasure in her life.
There is little, a very little in everybody's. The question is what kind. We cannot turn life into a pleasure, but we can choose such pleasures as are worthy of us and our immortal souls. Your mother chose, and I have chosen.
Immortal souls. And I suppose if I knelt down to worship you and everyone else would laugh.
Well, I think this is a more comfortable way. Yes, I'll do everything your mother did. Not so well, of course. I'll darn the conjurer's hat. Does one darn hats? And I'll cook the conjurer's dinner. By the way, what is a conjurer's dinner? There's always the goldfish, of course.
Carrots.
And of course, now I come to think of it, you can always take rabbits out of the hat. Why, what a cheap life it must be. We will be as happy as is good for us. We'll have confidence in each other at least, and no secrets. I insist on knowing all the tricks.
I don't know if I am on my head or on my heels.
And now, as we're to be so confidential and comfortable, you'll tell me the real practical, tricky little way you did that last trick.
How I did that last trick? I did it by devils. You can believe in fairies, can't you believe in devils?
No, I can't believe in devils.
Well, this whole room is full of them.
What does it all mean?
It means that I have done what many men have done, but few, I think, have thriven by. I've told you that I mixed with many queer sets of people, and among those people I mixed with those who pretended, truly and falsely, to do their tricks by the aid of spirits. I dabbled a little in the table rapping and the table turning, but I soon had reason to give it up.
Why did you give it up?
It began by giving me headaches. Every morning after a spiritualist seance, I had queer feelings of lowness and degradation, much like the feeling, I suppose, that a man has in the morning after having been drunk. But I have what people call a strong head, and have never been truly drunk.
I'm glad of that.
It was not for the want of trying. But it was not long before the spirits with whom I had been playing at table turning did what I think they generally do at the end of all such things.
What did they do?
They turned the tables. They turned the tables upon me. I don't wonder at their believing in fairies. As long as these things seem to me like my servants, well, they seem to me like fairies. But when they tried to become my masters, I found that the spirits with whom I at least had come in contact with were evil. Awfully, unnaturally evil.
Did they say so?
Do not speak of what they said. I was a loose fellow, but I had not fallen so low at such things. I resisted them, and after a pretty bad time, psychologically speaking, I cut the connection. But they were always tempting me to use the supernatural power that I had gotten from them. Oh, it was not much. Just enough to move things about, alter lights, and so on. I don't suppose you know what a strain it is on a man to drink bad coffee at a coffee stall, when he knows that he has just enough magic in him to make a bottle of champagne walk out of an empty shop.
I think you behaved very well.
And when I fell at last, it was for nothing half so clean and Christian as champagne. In black, blind pride, anger, and all kinds of heathenry, because of the impudence of a schoolboy, I called upon the fiends and they obeyed.
Poor fellow.
Your goodness is the only goodness that never goes wrong.
And what are we to do with Morris? I believe you now, my dear, but he will never believe.
There is no bigot like the atheist. I must think.
Where are you going?
I am going to ask the God whose enemies I have served if I'm still willing and able to save a child.
Remarkable man, that conjurer. Clever man. Curious man. Very curious man. A kind of man. You know, Lord bless us, what's that?
What's what? Hey, what's what?
I swear I heard a footstep.
Why, Hastings. Hastings, we thought you were a ghost.
I brought back the anti-vegetarians. I mean the vegetarians.
Why, Hastings, you are looking white.
I ask your Grace's pardon. I had a slight shock on entering the room.
A shock. What shock?
It is the first time I think your Grace's work has been disturbed by any private feelings of mine. I shall not trouble you with them. It will not occur again.
What an extraordinary fellow. I wonder if...
How do you feel?
I feel I must have a window shut, or I must have it open, and I don't know which it is.
In God's name, go! Really, sir, I'm not used to being spoken to.
It is not you whom I told to go.
No, but I think I will go. This room is simply horrible.
Room horrible, room horrible. No, no, no. Only a little crowded. A little crowded, and I don't seem to know anyone. We can't like everyone, you know, these large at-homes. Go back to hell from which I called you! It is the last order I shall give.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to tell that poor little lad a lie. I have found in the garden what he did not find in the garden. I have managed to think of a natural explanation of that last trick.
I think you are something like a great man. Can I take your explanation to him now?
No, I will take it myself. We all felt devilishly queer just then. Wonderful things there are in the world. Why? I suppose it's all electricity.
I think there has been more than electricity in all this.
Oh, Morris is ever so much better. The conjurer has told him such a good story of how the trick was done.
Professor, we owe you 1,000 thanks.
Really, you've doubled your claim to originality.
It is much more marvelous to explain a miracle than it is to work a miracle. What was your explanation, by the way?
I shall not tell you.
Indeed. Why not?
Because God and the demons and that immortal mystery that you deny has been here in this room tonight. Because you have seen it here. Because you have felt it here. Because you know the spirits as well as I know them and fear them as much as I fear them. Because this world would not avail if I told you the lie that I told Morris Carlian about how I did that last trick. Well, why, you would believe it as he believed it. You cannot possibly think of a natural explanation for that last trick. I alone thought of it after I did it by magic. But if I tell you a natural way of doing it, well, half an hour after I have left this house, you will all be saying how it was done. Goodbye.
I shall not say goodbye.
Oh, you are great as well as good, but a saint can be a sinner as well as a temptress. I put my honor in your hands. Oh yes, I have a little left. We began with a fairy tale. Have I any right to take advantage of that fairy tale?
Has not that fairy tale really and truly come to an end?
Yes, that fairy tale has really and truly come to an end. It is a very hard thing for a fairy tale to come to an end. If you leave it alone, it lingers everlastingly. Our fairy tale has come to an end in the only way a fairy tale can come to an end. In the only way a fairy tale can leave off being a fairy tale.
I don't understand you.
It has come true.
I've got a hat full of sunshine. I've got a hat full of sunshine. Pocket full of happiness. Jacket made of rainbows. Snappy dress. I got a hat full of sunshine.
Sunshine sipper, listening to buzzy bees. Why are you so bloody busy? Get from out your honey tree, unbutton your pantaloons, hitch up your dungarees, get your legs that lovely face. I bet you've got lovely knees. And now the mysteries of life, the keys to all your worries is to keep it simplified. Don't stuff the place that you reside with too much stuff, all buried under debt. Have too much love. It's a world of wonder. Don't let them keep you undermined. Every day drip with joy, written in bold, underlined. We the undivided, undecided, and the undefined demand a sense of wonder and the sense to wonder why. Keep your work days to a minimum. Bake a life as sweet as cinnamon. This is a new hat. Would you like to wear it? What's the point of sunshine unless you share it?
I've got a hat full of sunshine. A pocket